Hey everyone, Jonathan Silva here with Pragmatic Works. For this part of my SharePoint Basics series, we are going to start to look at how to create calculated columns in a SharePoint list. For this process, what we're going to do is open up a SharePoint list and just get right in and creating 3 different calculated columns for different purposes that we may have. We have different parts that go, or the different costs that go into building out that project. And what I'd like to do are create 3 different calculated columns. The first is to have like a build cost or total cost of the project itself in order to actually produce it. Then we want to have a projected profit or MSRP, whatever it might be, for another column built on that. And then finally, what I'd like to do is take this due date and set up a reminder date. So maybe 14 days before, 2 weeks before, have a date ready to go so we know that we need to have like a follow-up before we have this final production, final presentation of our project. Now, in order to get this started, what we want to do is go ahead and navigate to our list settings. Now, the list settings here inside of SharePoint are all the way up at the top right of the screen. And that's over here with our gear icon right here. There's our settings that we can select for SharePoint. And when you click on that, we can then navigate down to list settings. On list settings, if you select that, we can then see all of the parts of our list here. And what we want to do are create a few columns. So that's what we're going to do right here at the bottom is select create column. And once you choose create column, this is where you can just start making out your custom columns. You can see here we have all the different data types available for us for these columns. In this case, we are going to be using calculated each and every time. So I can just select that here where it says calculations can be based on other columns that already exist. But I need to put a column name, right? So for this one, we'll start off with our build cost. And for our build cost here, as we put together this new column, okay, we have our calculated as our type. The formula here is how we're actually going to build this out. Now, we can very simply utilize a lot of our existing Excel knowledge base here to build out these formulas. So I can say equals sum. Just like in Excel, we're going to add together 2 different columns. And for this column here that we have, this calculation is we're going to add together our labor cost and our parts cost. So I can do a sum and open parentheses here for our expression. And I can either select a column and choose add to formula, just like that, and then put a comma in because we're going to add these 2 together. Or you can just go ahead and double click right on that column as well. You'll notice that within our formula here that we do have square brackets that designate our column structure. This is very similar to things you'll see, say, in Power Automate or Power BI. Excel, same idea here. So it's something that's going to be nice and smooth across here within SharePoint. And if I'm all set within this column, all I need is a closing parentheses, and that's it. The only thing we need to do at the end is dictate, okay, what is the data type we are returning for this new column? Do I want it to be a number or a currency? If it is a currency, how many decimal places am I going to put it? Automatic, or do I want to designate, I want 2 decimal places every single time? Which is the currency format I want? I'm in the United States, so I'm going to use the United States here. And then when I'm all said and done, all I need to do is at the very bottom, select OK. You can see here that if you want to have any special formatting here, you can add in some JSON in order to help do that. But in this case, we're just going to leave it as is and then hit OK. And we now have our new column. Let's add in our 2 other ones here and then see the results in the end. So this next column we're going to add in, I'm going to select create column one more time. Okay, we've just done our build cost. Now what we'd like to do is provide a final price to clients. All right, this is like our MSRP or whatever we're going to charge the client or the other company here of actually building out this project. Once again, this is a calculated column based upon another column. We have our build cost, so now we can use that if we need. So we can come in here within our formula and we can take that build cost column that we've already had and come in here and say, you know what, we're going to have a markup of 80% on this project, whatever it might be. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply our build cost with that little star there by 1.8. All right, so that's going to say we're going to take that, multiply that number by 1.8, and that's going to be our final price to our customer or our client. Obviously, this could be anything, just coming up with numbers here, but that can be a calculation we have. And I can come in here, and once again, if I want to make this a currency, I make it a currency or a whole number. And we can come in, choose our decimal places once more, and then hit OK. So we now have two calculated columns added in, our build cost, our final price to client. Let's do one more. And again, we'll take a look at what these all look like here in just a moment. And the last one we're going to create here, if I select create column, is going to be our check-in date, maybe follow-up date. So we can call this our final check-in date, right? This is going to be a calculated column that will be a date data type in the end here. But what we're going to do is we're going to take our due date column here, and I can add the formula or double click once more. And I'm just going to subtract 14 minus 1, 4. I'm going to subtract 14 from that date. I'm going to declare this a date and time data type, date only. I'm not really worried about time in this case. And then we can go ahead and just move on. It's really that simple here within your calculated fields or calculated columns in SharePoint. Use what you know from Excel, from other applications, and build out your columns just like this. I can hit OK. And now that we have our 3 created, all I need to do is go back into my list and let's see how they turned out. So I'm going to go navigate back to my list here, my list settings on the far left, upcoming projects, and I now should be able to see those columns. Now, if you don't see them here, you can always add them in. To see, it did take a moment here for them to show up, but you could always add them in when you select add column. You could do show or hide columns if anytime you're like, I can't see what I've made. Show or hide columns here is going to be able to let you get this check-in where you can choose the columns you want to appear on your list. But here we go. We now have our new columns created that we have. So if I take build cost, let me just move it over here. Let me switch it over. Come on, there we go. All right, so we have our build cost right here. And the way we did this, if you remember, we went in for our build cost. We added together our parts and our labor to equal the build. So 1 plus 5 is 6, right? 2.5 and 8 is 10.5. 12 and 13 is 25. So we're able to get that build cost, that calculated column there. We then have our final price to client here that we have. So we're taking our build cost and multiplying it by 1.8, and there you get our final price to client. So we're now able to have that automatically built in here. So we have that calculated field all set up for us. And of course, we could have made this any more, change this around if we needed to. And then the last column that we did create here is our calculated field, was our final check-in date. This final check-in date is going to take our due date, go back 2 weeks, and there you have each and every single one. We have 14 days from that day. We now have that created. So if we wanted to integrate this with Power Automate and send out reminder emails, we had that check-in date already built in. We don't have to do it inside of our flow. If we want to have this so we can print this out or see this later on for our users, everything here is automatically set up for us already. We could just go. And you can see here, working with SharePoint, working with our calculated columns, it's not that difficult to have. We just need to know where to go. And once we're there, utilize what you already know from Excel, from everything else, make your life a little bit easier from there. Thanks for joining me here once again, looking at SharePoint basics. Stay tuned for our next episode here as we continue to look at how we can make SharePoint and all these lists and everything we have here at SharePoint just a little bit easier to work with. Stay tuned. See you next time.